This is a factual review of source material concerning the term descriptive grammar. We will examine a framework that presents an alternative to the traditional understanding of this concept. The focus is on the source's argument for a different approach to grammar pedagogy.
The source material centers on a question it identifies as a common point of frustration for language learners. This question addresses the perceived discrepancy between formal language rules and actual spoken usage.
To understand the proposed framework, we will first review how the term descriptive grammar is defined within what the source refers to as traditional grammar.
Within the traditional view, descriptive grammar is not treated as a component of grammar. It is positioned as an abstract concept intended for linguists, a method for analyzing language, rather than a practical element of it.
The traditional framework establishes a distinction. The descriptive approach observes and reports on how people use language. This is contrasted with the prescriptive approach, which dictates the standards for how language ought to be used. The source material argues that this traditional view results in significant pedagogical problems for those teaching and learning a language.
The source's primary criticism is stated in this verbatim quote: "The fact that these two very distinct aspects of grammar are not even recognized by the traditional world of linguistics and English pedagogy is unfathomable."
The text offers a classroom scenario as evidence. When a student questions the disparity between a textbook rule and common usage, the source claims the directed response is often an assertion such as, "That's just the way it is," rather than a structural explanation. The source material identifies three specific problems. First, the failure of the traditional system to recognize two distinct aspects of grammar. Second, the consequent dismissal of student inquiries. Third, inconsistent usage of the terms among scholars, which contributes to the confusion.
Having identified the problem, the source proposes a resolution. This resolution is based on establishing a clear distinction between two separate aspects of grammar.
Herein lies the fundamental difference. In traditional linguistics, the terms are concepts for analysis. In the framework titled The Grammar of the Common Tongue, they represent two distinct categories of grammatical rules and regulations. According to the source, the traditional approach combines all grammatical directives into a single, undifferentiated category of rules. It is claimed this lack of categorization is a primary source of difficulty for learners.
The resolution offered in the text is to formally recognize and teach that grammar comprises two distinct aspects, one that describes common usage and another that prescribes mandatory structures for clarity.
To implement this distinction, the source proposes new definitions for foundational terms. We will now review the definitions provided within this framework.
First, the term rule. The source defines a rule, based on its etymology, as a measuring device, a tool used to guide a line. It is specified that the rule is the tool, not the guideline that is produced.
In contrast, regulation is defined as that which is dictated to limit, restrict, and prescribe behavior. This is presented as the directive itself. This definition is also based on the word's etymology. Based on these definitions, descriptive grammar is the category of grammatical rules. These describe common usage and, according to the framework, can be violated without a loss of communication. Conversely, prescriptive grammar is the category of regulations. These are directives that must be followed. The framework asserts that violating these will result in the message being obscured or lost.
The stated purpose of this redefinition is to introduce greater clarity and logic into the study of grammar.
To summarize the framework's core assertions, first, English grammar is not a monolithic entity. Second, it consists of two distinct aspects. Third, these aspects directly correspond to the newly defined rules and regulations.
The source claims that understanding this distinction resolves confusion. It states, quote, "And knowing this to be true, much of what seemed to be confusing and illogical about English grammar suddenly makes sense and is a lot more clear." The stated purpose of this framework is to create clarity by fundamentally altering how grammar is defined.